therapists and couples need to do, which is, allow her the space to exhibit the emotion, but not internalize that physicality or words as I deserve it, shame-based kind of beliefs. And you had mentioned earlier about getting him to show empathy or giving him tools to assist her through this process. I don't know, is it possible for you to share a little bit about what that means? I mean, I'm not sure what you would do to help a spouse, an addict, let's say, show more empathy for her process. Because I see that often is where he, quote unquote, stops the behavior, but hasn't really learned how to have a relational intimacy, relationship with his spouse. And meanwhile, she's dealing with still maybe intense anger and whatnot. And his response is, well, you should be over it because I've stopped. So how do you really get a spouse to show empathy for their process that they're in?
I do it 3 ways. I wrote a book on empathy, and so what I found is that very thing could occur where he's like, I've been in recovery 9 months. Why don't you feel safe? What else can I do? And so I've never known if somebody with sex addiction lost their empathy, but they initially had it, but they had to lose it to become so self-centered as to participate in behaviors that eventually became compulsive. And then, of course, to keep the addiction going, they have to stay self-centered. So does that empathy just kind of fall out of the picture? Did they have it before? Or did they lack empathy to begin with? And so they never really had it, which also could be a predisposition to an addiction. And what I noticed was my men really wanted to help her. The addicts I worked with really did want to help her. They didn't know how. And a partner who's been dejected and rejected is so guarded and so angry and so depressed that they are constantly mistrusting recovery. And they don't want to give grace initially because they don't want to get duped again. And so they stay very guarded. So that empathy process is twofold in that I give him a formula for empathy, and then I ask her to be open to receiving it, which is almost equally as hard. Now, the formula that I use, you asked about a tool, is one that I created. It's called AVR. And it's been very, very, very successful in that it's easy for men to use. And I run men's groups that are partner sensitive. And the men will go, well, did you AVR? You should have AVR'd her then. Of course she's feeling blah, 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 blah. A stands for acknowledge. And so what he has to do is acknowledge her issue or acknowledge her current pain, whatever is going on for her right there. Now, it's been my experience that the number one thing a partner wants is to know that he knows that he caused her pain, and he hasn't forgotten that in his recovery. Just because he's better doesn't mean she's better. And so she wants to be reminded, I know that I caused this. You're reacting to the old me. So acknowledging the pain would look something like, I can imagine that it's been really tough for you. When I was 15 minutes late, you wondered if I was acting out, because that's when I acted out in the past. And I acknowledge that. And then V stands for validate the feeling, and I ask him to keep it to 1 of the 5. And I would suspect that you're feeling very anxious right now because you aren't sure of what really happened. And then the R stands for reassurance. And so he says, but I want to reassure you that was the old me. That wasn't the new me. And I'm going to put Post-it notes all over my desk and my computer and my car that says, if you're going to be 2 minutes late, give her a call and let her know you're on the way home. Or whatever the reassurance would be, so that he's AVR'd her. That makes him feel like he has undone the wrong to some degree. He's gotten a do-over. He's gotten to show her he will do it differently. For her, I said she's got to be open to it. I mean, if she looks at him and says, that's baloney, and I don't buy it for a second, that's going to be a real problem. So it's important for her to say, thank you for sharing, or I hear you loud and clear. So that's one tool that he can use. And believe it or not, a lot of the tools in my book are very easy, but difficult to do when a couple is in a state of crisis. So I talk about reflective listening and always allowing her to go first and to share her feelings for at least 3 minutes uninterrupted. And then he repeats back verbatim what he heard her say. And he is not allowed to put his 2 cents into it, his opinion, defend himself. He's just to let her know that she has been heard. That brings them closer together. But speaking of close together, the other thing I say is that couples have to face each other, touch knees to knees when they're communicating, and look at each other's left eye, because that's the window of the soul. And as corny as that sounds, and as sitcomish as it sounds, there's an instant connection when you're looking at your partner's left eye, and there's some physicality there where you're touching in a safe way. It's not like he's got his arm around her. They're touching knees to knees. Now, let's face it, in today's age, when you're in the car, when you're busy, when you're folding laundry, it can be very difficult. But for general conversations that need to occur, they always need to be face to face. That's how they'll heal faster.
I love all of those techniques. I love the idea of having safe